I don't usually post on here, but this is something I can't stop thinking about, even years later. I've gone over every possible explanation in my head, rational, irrational, everything in between, but nothing really fits. So, here it is, my best attempt at putting this experience into words. It all started 3 years ago when I moved to a new city for work. I was broke. And I don't mean cutting back on Starbucks, broke, I mean rationing peanut butter sandwiches, broke. My last apartment had been a barely livable studio where I had to stuff towels under the door to keep out cockroaches the size of my thumb. So when I saw a listing for a one-bedroom at an unbelievably cheap price, I jumped on it without hesitation. The ad itself was vague. No pictures, no detailed description. Just one-bedroom apartment available. Second floor. Quiet building. Low rent. Serious inquiries only. It almost sounded too good to be true. But when you're desperate, you don't ask a lot of questions. The landlord, Mr. Hollis, met me outside when I showed up for a viewing. He was an older guy, maybe in his 60s, with a face like crumpled paper, deep lines, sunken eyes, thinning gray hair. He had that stiff, no-nonsense energy of someone who didn't have time for small talk. "You the one who called?" he asked, voice flat. "Yeah. Caleb." I extended my hand. He didn't shake it. Just nodded and gestured for me to follow him inside. The building was old, 3 stories tall, made of faded red brick. A metal fire escape clung to the side like a skeletal ribcage. The front door was one of those heavy wooden ones with a brass handle, and it groaned when he pushed it open. Inside, the hallway smelled old. Not in a comforting, nostalgic way, but in a stale, damp way, like wood that had soaked up too much rain over the years. The walls were covered in faded floral wallpaper that was peeling at the edges, revealing cracked plaster underneath. The overhead lights flickered, buzzing faintly, like they were struggling to stay on. As we walked up the creaky wooden staircase to the second floor, Hollis spoke for the first time since we entered. "Rent's due on the 1st. No parties. No pets. No smoking." His voice was monotone, like he was reading a script he had repeated too many times to care anymore. "Got it," I said. We reached the second floor, and he led me down a narrow hallway lined with identical doors. The air was colder here, like a draft was seeping through unseen cracks. "This is you," he said, stopping in front of apartment 2B. He unlocked the door and pushed it open, stepping aside so I could enter. The apartment was small, but honestly, I liked it. The wooden floors were scuffed but sturdy. There was a tiny kitchenette against one wall with an old gas stove and a white fridge that hummed softly. A single window overlooked the street, and even though the glass was slightly warped, it let in just enough light to make the place feel less claustrophobic. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I turned to Hollis. "What's the catch?" "No catch." His eyes flicked toward the end of the hall. "Just one rule." I followed his gaze. There was a door at the far end of the hallway. It was just like the others, plain white, no markings, but something about it felt off. The doorknob looked newer than the rest, like it had been replaced recently. More than that, there were 4 heavy-duty locks stacked on top of each other. Hollis sighed like he had done this conversation 1,000 times. "That door stays locked. You don't open it. You don't knock on it. You don't ask about it." I blinked. "Why?" "Because I said so." I let out a small laugh, expecting him to crack a smile. He didn't. His face was carved from stone. "Look, kid," he said, rubbing his temple, "if you want the place, you take it with that rule. If not, you can walk." I hesitated. I really needed this apartment. But something about the way he said it, it wasn't just a landlord being strict. It was like he was warning me. But whatever. I wasn't about to let some weird locked door ruin my shot at cheap rent. "Fine," I said. "Not my business, anyway." Hollis handed me the keys without another word and left. The first week. For the first few days, nothing weird happened. My neighbors kept to themselves, the walls were thin enough that I could hear muffled conversations, and the apartment was drafty in a way that made it impossible to ever feel fully warm. The only thing that bugged me was the door at the end of the hall. I tried to ignore it, I really did. But every time I walked past it, I felt watched. Like there was something standing behind it, pressing its ear against the wood. I'd catch myself staring at it longer than I meant to, waiting to hear, what? I don't know. Something. One night, after a late shift, I was unlocking my apartment when I noticed something. The locks on the mystery door were different. Not removed. Not broken. Just rearranged. Like someone had unlocked them and then put them back in a different order. I stood there for a long time, staring at those metal bolts. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just exhausted. I shook it off and went inside. The knocking. It was a Saturday night when it happened. I had just gotten into bed, phone in hand, mindlessly scrolling through social media. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional groan of the pipes in the walls. I was just starting to drift off when I heard it. Knock. 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 It wasn't from my door. It was coming from the end of the hallway. From inside the locked room. I froze. The sound wasn't frantic, not like someone trying to escape. It was slow, deliberate. 3 even knocks. A pause. Then 3 more. I sat up, my pulse hammering. Was one of my neighbors screwing with me? Maybe someone got locked in there as a prank. I climbed out of bed and crept to my door, pressing my ear against it. The hallway was silent. The knocking had stopped. I waited a few minutes before cracking the door open and peering out. The hall was empty. The locked door stood at the end, untouched. I almost laughed at myself. You're being paranoid. I shut the door, locked it, and climbed back into bed. And then... knock. 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 Louder this time. Right as I sat up again, my phone screen suddenly lit up. A notification. My stomach dropped. It was from my neighbor. Dude. Don't open your door. I stared at my phone screen, my heart slamming against my ribs. Dude. Don't open your door. The message was from Ethan, the guy in 2C. We'd only exchanged a few words since I moved in, quick hellos in the hallway, nothing more. But right now, I didn't care that I barely knew him. My fingers were already moving. Me, what do you mean? The message bubble popped up. He was typing. Then it disappeared. Reappeared. Stopped again. The knocking had stopped too. I forced myself to listen. The hallway outside my door was dead silent. The only sound was my own breathing, way too loud in the stillness of the room. Another message came through. Ethan, just trust me. If you hear knocking, ignore it. Don't go out there. Don't look. My mouth went dry. I didn't like this. Not one bit. I typed back. Me, did you hear it too? The message sat on read for a full minute before I got a reply. Ethan, go to sleep. I stared at my phone, my pulse thudding in my ears. Something was seriously wrong here. I thought about messaging him again, but I had this sudden, overwhelming feeling that if I kept pushing, he wouldn't respond at all. Like he had already told me too much. I locked my phone and set it on my nightstand. The room felt different now. The air was heavier, the silence too deep. Every shadow in the corners seemed darker. I forced myself to lie down, pulling the covers up to my chin like a damn kid. I closed my eyes. I tried to sleep. I didn't. Strange neighbors. Morning came, and I hadn't slept at all. The knocking never came back, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been outside my door all night. Waiting. By the time the sun rose, I was exhausted, but my curiosity was eating me alive. I needed answers. I decided to talk to Ethan in person. I knocked on 2C around noon. A few seconds passed, and then the door cracked open about 6 inches, just enough for me to see Ethan's face. He was younger than I expected, probably my age, with messy dark hair and deep bags under his eyes, like he hadn't slept either. "Hey," I said. "About last night." "Forget it." His voice was low, urgent. He glanced past me toward the locked door at the end of the hall, then back at me. "Just, drop it, man." "Drop it?" I let out a dry laugh. "Dude, someone was knocking from inside that room." His grip tightened on the doorframe. "You don't want to mess with this." I frowned. "What the hell does that mean? What's in there?" His jaw tensed, like he was debating something. Then, finally, he sighed. "Look, just, if you hear it again, do not open your door. No matter what." Before I could ask anything else, he shut the door in my face. Well, that was definitely not suspicious at all. I stood there for a moment, staring at the peeling paint on his door, trying to decide what to do next. That's when I noticed the woman. She was standing at the other end of the hall, just outside apartment 2D. Middle-aged, graying hair tied back in a bun, wearing an oversized cardigan that hung off her thin frame. She was watching me, her face blank, eyes sharp. When our eyes met, she smiled, small and tight. "Don't bother with Ethan," she said. "He's always been a worrier." I turned to face her. "So you heard it too?" Her expression didn't change. She tilted her head slightly, considering me. "Did you knock back?" I stared. "What?" Her lips curled into a thin smile. "People always wonder what's behind a locked door. But they never ask what's on the other side." A chill ran down my spine. "Do you know what's in there?" I asked slowly. She chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "I've lived here a long time, kid. You learn not to ask too many questions." She turned and disappeared into her apartment, shutting the door softly behind her. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What the hell was going on in this building? The locks had changed again. That night, I tried to convince myself that everyone here was just weird. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was just some unspoken local superstition, like the way old hotels don't have a 13th floor. I tried to ignore it. I almost convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. Until I stepped into the hallway before bed and noticed something. The locks on the door at the end of the hall, the big, heavy-duty industrial locks, had changed again. I was sure of it this time. The locks weren't removed or unlocked. They were just shuffled around. Like someone had opened them and then put them back in a different order. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that the door handle, which had always been spotless, shiny brass, was smudged. Like someone had been gripping it. Like someone, or something, had been standing on the other side. Holding it. Trying to turn it. I took a step back, heart pounding so hard it hurt. And then. Knock. 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 I almost screamed. It was right there. Right in front of me. The knocking was softer this time. Less urgent. Like it knew I was standing there. My body locked up. Every part of me was screaming to move, to run, to do something, but I couldn't. Then came the worst part. A voice. Low. Whispering. Right up against the door. "Let me out." I turned and ran, slamming my apartment door shut behind me, locking it, bolting it, shoving a chair up against the handle like I was in some horror movie. My breath was ragged, my hands shaking. My phone buzzed. I jumped, heart hammering against my ribs. I forced myself to look at the screen. "Ethan, you heard it, didn't you?" I stared at the message, my fingers trembling as I typed back. "Me, what the hell is in there?" The dots appeared. He was typing. Then they disappeared. Then they came back. And then I got his response. "Ethan, not what? Who did I didn't sleep that night? Not after that text. Not after the knocking. And definitely not after reading Ethan's last message. Not what? Who?" I kept my bedroom door locked, every light in my apartment on. I sat in bed, staring at my phone, waiting for another message, another sound, something. But nothing else happened. By the time morning came, I felt like a zombie. My body was exhausted, but my mind was running laps. I needed answers. I wasn't the type to just ignore shit like this. I had to know what the hell was going on. I decided to try Ethan again. I knocked on his door. Nothing. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and texted him. "Dude, I need to talk to you. Open up." The message sat on delivered for almost a full minute before I saw the 3 little dots appear. Then they stopped. Then, finally, his response. "Ethan, I can't talk about it." That pissed me off. I wasn't asking for cryptic warnings, I wanted to know what the hell was in that apartment. "Me, you already told me too much. Just tell me the rest." "Read." No reply. I sighed and rubbed my face. "Okay. Fine." Ethan wasn't talking. But that didn't mean I couldn't find someone who would. And I knew exactly where to start. Mrs. Langley's warning. I knocked on Mrs. Langley's door. A few seconds later, I heard movement inside, slow, shuffling steps. The door cracked open just enough for me to see one of her sharp blue eyes peering out. "Morning," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Can I ask you something?" She hesitated, then opened the door a little wider. "If it's about that door," she said, nodding toward apartment 2B, "then my answer is the same as before." I swallowed. "What's in there?" She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. "You need to let this go." "I can't," I said. "I heard knocking last night." And a voice. She closed her eyes for a moment, like she was exhausted. When she opened them again, she looked at me, not with surprise, but with something worse. Pity. "You heard him." The way she said it made my stomach drop. "Him." I opened my mouth, but she cut me off. "Listen to me, dear. Whatever you do, do not acknowledge it. Don't respond. Don't knock back. Don't even think about opening that door." I nodded slowly. "And if I do?" She took a step closer, gripping the edge of her cardigan like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Then I hope you're strong enough to keep it closed." That sent a real chill through me. "Who is he?" I asked, voice low. Mrs. Langley sighed. Then, for the first time, she looked nervous. "You should leave this building, dear." That wasn't an answer. Before I could press her for more, she shut the door. Something was wrong with the door. I stood there for a moment, my skin crawling. Every instinct was telling me to listen to her, to drop this, but at this point, I was in too deep. I turned toward apartment 2B. The hallway was silent. The air was still, heavy. The door looked the same as always, 6 deadbolts, thick wood. But the longer I stared at it, the more uneasy I felt. I took a step closer. That's when I noticed it. The door handle. It had been scratched. Thin, erratic marks surrounded it, like someone with shaky hands had dragged something sharp across the surface over and over. Some of the scratches were deep, carved so hard into the wood that splinters stuck out. Like someone had been trying to open it. Or trying to get out. My breath came short. I took a step back. And that's when I saw it. Something shifted in the peephole. Not movement, exactly. Just, a presence. Like something was standing right on the other side of the door. Watching me. I turned and walked away. Quickly. A final warning. Back in my apartment, I locked everything. Door, windows, hell, even my closet. I didn't care if it was paranoid. I needed to feel safe. I sat on my couch, gripping my phone. My hands were still shaking. I pulled up Ethan's number. Me, dude, I need to know what's in there. Read. No reply. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I was about to toss my phone on the table when it buzzed. Ethan, stop looking at the door. My stomach twisted. Before I could reply, another message came through. Ethan, and whatever you do, don't look through the peephole. I froze. Because I had already done exactly that I don't think I breathed for a full minute. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I stared at Ethan's message. Don't look through the peephole. But I had. I had already done the one thing I wasn't supposed to do. And the worst part? I knew I wasn't alone in that hallway. I knew something had been standing right there, just inches away. Watching me. My hands felt cold, my skin clammy. I swallowed hard and forced myself to type a reply. Me, why? What happens if you do? The message was read immediately. But no response came. I stared at my screen, waiting, my heart hammering. My apartment felt smaller all of a sudden, like the walls were closing in. Seconds passed. Then a full minute. Nothing. I was about to text again when... thud. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It came from the hallway. A heavy, slow knock against wood. Right outside. I gripped my phone, my body frozen in place. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. Thud. Louder this time. I couldn't breathe. I don't know how long I sat there, every muscle in my body tense. The air in my apartment felt thick, suffocating. I wanted to grab something, my keys, a knife, anything, but I couldn't even get my fingers to move. Then. My phone buzzed. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped it. It was Ethan. Ethan, don't move. Don't make a sound. It knows you saw it. My stomach flipped. It knows. The knocking stopped. I strained my ears, listening, trying to figure out if it was still out there. The hallway was silent again. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full. Like something was standing just outside my door, waiting. Then. I heard breathing. Right outside. Not normal breathing. Not the soft sound of someone catching their breath. This was wrong. Ragged, uneven, like someone was struggling to breathe. Wet, rasping gulps of air, like lungs trying to work but failing. The sound made my skin crawl. I pressed myself against the couch, trying to be as small as possible. My fingers hovered over my phone screen, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Me, it's still out there. Ethan responded immediately. Ethan, I know. I clenched my jaw, my pulse hammering. What the hell does that mean? Then another text came through. Ethan, close your eyes. I stared at the screen, confused. Me, what? Ethan, close your eyes and count to 100. Don't open them. No matter what you hear. No. Nope. Absolutely not. I wasn't about to just sit here with my eyes shut while something stood outside my door, breathing like it had broken lungs. Thud. I flinched again. The knock was heavier this time. Angry. Then. My doorknob started to turn. Slowly. My stomach lurched. I watched in horror as it twisted, rattling against the lock, testing it. Not frantic, not hurried, just patient. Testing. Waiting. I scrambled back, nearly knocking over my coffee table. My whole body screamed at me to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. I was trapped. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, close your eyes. Count. My breath came out in short, panicked gasps. I squeezed my eyes shut. And I started counting. 1, 2, 3. The breathing outside my door got louder. 10, 11, 12. It wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside my apartment. 20, 21, 22. I clenched my hands into fists, digging my nails into my palms. I could feel it near me. The air had changed, thicker, heavier, colder. 37. 38. 39. Something shifted in front of me. A slow, dragging movement across the floor. 50. 51. 52. The air next to my face felt wrong. Too close. 66. 67. 68. I swear to God, I felt something brush against my skin. 81. 82. 83. The rasping breaths slowed. 97. 98. 99. Silence. 100. I opened my eyes. My apartment was empty. The door was locked. Nothing was out of place. But the air still felt off. Like the room had been disturbed. My phone buzzed one last time. Ethan, it's gone. For now. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. For now that I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Even after Ethan's last message, my apartment still felt wrong. Every shadow looked deeper. Every sound felt off, like the air itself was holding its breath. I sat on my couch, back pressed against the armrest, eyes locked on the door. I kept my phone clutched in my hands, waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for. More knocking. Another text from Ethan. Something worse. I was too scared to turn off the lights. Too scared to even blink for too long. The Locked Room, Part 5. I didn't leave my apartment the next day. I barely moved. I sat on my couch, clutching my phone, replaying every second of what had happened. That thing, whatever it was, had been inside my apartment. And the worst part? I had felt it. The way the air changed. The way the room felt occupied. That horrible, wet breathing inches from my face. And all I could think about was Ethan's last message. It's gone. For now. I checked the time. 3:42 p.m. Sunlight streamed through my window, casting long shadows across my floor. The logical part of my brain told me that I was safe. It was daytime. Nothing happens in the daytime. But the other part of me, the part that knew something was wrong, wasn't so sure. I needed answers. I needed to know what I had seen. And Ethan was the only person who could tell me. The apartment next door. I walked down the hallway, past that door, keeping my eyes straight ahead. I knocked on Ethan's door, harder this time. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Ethan, I called, pressing my ear against the wood. Come on, man. Silence. I checked my phone. My last message to him was still marked as read. I sent another one. Me, I know you're in there. Open the door. I waited, staring at the screen. The 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then, finally. Ethan, go home. I clenched my jaw. Me, no. I need to know what's going on. Nothing. Then, after a long pause. Ethan, fine. My door's unlocked. Come in. But close it fast. My stomach twisted. That wasn't normal. Not come in, not but close it fast. I hesitated, then slowly turned the handle. Ethan looked like hell. His apartment was dark. The curtains were drawn, the air thick with something stale, like sweat and something else I couldn't place. The only light came from his computer screen, the glow casting eerie shadows on his face. And when I saw him, Jesus! He looked awful. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles. His skin was pale, almost sickly. He was gripping a half-empty bottle of whiskey, his hands shaking slightly as he took a sip. I closed the door behind me. Jesus, Ethan, I said. You look like shit. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, well. Haven't slept in a while. I sat down across from him, my knee bouncing with nervous energy. What the hell is going on, man? He sighed, rubbing his face. I told you not to look through the peephole. My stomach tightened. Yeah, well. Too late. He looked up at me, his face unreadable. Did you see it? I swallowed hard. No. But I felt it. His expression darkened. Then you're already fucked. The words sent an icy chill through my body. Fucked how? I asked, leaning forward. What is that thing? Why is it in there? Why hasn't anyone called the cops? Ethan exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. Because it's not that simple. I waited, my heart pounding. He took another swig of whiskey, then set the bottle down. No one knows exactly what it is. But that apartment, it's been locked up for years. The landlord won't say shit, but people talk. And the ones who've been here long enough, they know better than to go near it. I swallowed hard. But someone lived there before, right? Ethan hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. Yeah, he said. A guy named David. He lived there for years. Quiet dude. Kept to himself. What happened to him? Ethan's fingers tightened around the bottle. He disappeared. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean disappeared? Ethan's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear there. I mean, one day he was here. And the next, he wasn't. My pulse pounded in my ears. No one saw him leave, Ethan continued. No moving trucks. No goodbyes. He was just gone. Left everything behind. Clothes, wallet, phone. Like he just vanished. I exhaled slowly. And you think? I know, Ethan interrupted. He looked through the peephole too. I felt my stomach drop. I suddenly felt exposed, like something had just crawled under my skin. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. It doesn't like being seen. A heavy silence filled the room. I licked my lips, my mouth dry. Then what happens next? Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, finally. You'll find out soon enough. Ethan's words sat heavy in the air. You'll find out soon enough. I wanted to push him for more, demand answers, force him to tell me exactly what the hell was happening, but before I could, he stood up, rubbing his face like he was too damn tired to keep talking. You need to go, he muttered. I blinked. What? He gestured toward the door. Go back to your apartment. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. And whatever you do," his voice dropped lower. "Don't listen to it." The way he said that last part made my stomach twist. "Listen to what?" I asked. Ethan exhaled through his nose, his eyes dark. "You'll know." A chill ran through me. I wanted to argue, to stay, to do something, but the way he was looking at me, it was like he already knew it was too late. Like I was already doomed. So I left. And that's when things got worse. The whispering. I locked my door the second I got back to my apartment. The place felt off again. Like the air was thicker, heavier. I checked every corner, every closet, even under my bed, nothing. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired. I just felt wrong. So I sat on my couch, watching the door. Waiting. Hours passed. The sun went down. The apartment grew darker. Quieter. Then, just past midnight, I heard it. A voice. Soft. Muffled. Coming from the hallway. I sat up, every nerve in my body on high alert. It was low at first, just a quiet hum of words I couldn't quite make out. Like someone was speaking just beyond my door. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. "Me, Ethan. Someone's in the hallway." No response. The whispering grew louder. I strained my ears, trying to make out the words. Then I froze. Because I recognized the voice. It was my mother's. My stomach dropped. "Honey. Open the door." No. No, no, no. My mother lived 2 states away. There was no way she was outside my apartment right now. I squeezed my eyes shut, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. "Please, sweetie. Just unlock the door." I gripped my phone tighter, my hands slick with sweat. My pulse pounded in my ears. It wasn't her. It couldn't be her. But God, it sounded just like her. The same warmth. The same soft, loving tone she used when I was a kid. The kind of voice that made you feel safe. And that's when I realized. It knows. It knew who my mother was. It knew her voice. It knew how to make me trust it. I forced myself to breathe, to think. I typed out another message. "Me, Ethan. Please answer me. It sounds like my mom." The dots appeared instantly. Then. "Ethan, no matter what it says, do not open the door." I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. Then another message. "Ethan, it's not your mother." A shiver crawled up my spine. I stared at the door, my muscles tense. The voice outside changed. The warmth was gone. The softness vanished. Now, it was lower. Rougher. Like something was trying to sound human and failing. "Let me in." I clenched my jaw. The doorknob rattled. Violently. I shot to my feet, backing away from the door. My chest was tight, my breath shallow. Something slammed against the wood. Hard. Then, another whisper, low, slithering, pressing against my ears like cold hands. "I know you can hear me." I gritted my teeth. Then. A new sound. Something scratching against the door. Slow. Methodical. Like nails dragging down the surface. I couldn't take it. I turned, ran to my bedroom, and slammed the door shut, locking it. The whispering didn't stop. I crawled into the corner of my room, clutching my phone, my entire body trembling. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the sound, trying to pretend it wasn't happening. But it was. It was real. And then. A new noise. My closet door creaked open. I stopped breathing. The whispering was still coming from the hallway. The knocking, the rattling, still at the front door. But now, there was something else. Inside my apartment. Inside my bedroom. Right behind me. I didn't move. I didn't turn around. But I felt it. The air shifted. Something was in the closet. Watching me. My phone buzzed in my hand. I forced myself to look down, my heart slamming against my ribs. It was Ethan. Ethan, whatever you do, don't turn around. That I didn't move. I couldn't. My breath came in short, shallow bursts, my hands trembling as I gripped my phone. The whispering outside my apartment had stopped. No more rattling doorknob. No more scratching. But the air behind me, inside my bedroom, was heavy. Thick. Like something else was breathing in the dark. My phone buzzed in my hands again. Ethan, do not turn around. Do not look at it. Just get out of your apartment. Now. My fingers were ice cold. I barely had the strength to type back. Me, it's in my room. In the closet. 3 dots. Then. Ethan, I know. Don't look at it. Just move. Every part of my body screamed at me to turn around, to see what was there, but deep down, I knew I couldn't. I had already made one mistake by looking through the peephole. If I turned around now, I don't think I would survive. I forced my muscles to move. Slowly, so slowly, I got to my feet, keeping my eyes locked on my phone. My hands were clammy. My breathing felt too loud. I reached for my bedroom door handle. The air behind me shifted. A shuffling sound. Like something crawling. My throat tightened. Every cell in my body told me to run, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I was out. I turned the handle. The door creaked as it opened. Something behind me moved. I stepped forward. And that's when I heard it. A voice. Low. Raspy. Right behind me. I see you. A wave of ice shot through my veins. I ran. I bolted out of my bedroom, sprinting through the apartment, my socked feet sliding on the wooden floor. I fumbled at the front door lock, my hands slick with sweat. I didn't look back. I heard it move, something shifting in my room, a dragging sound that made my skin crawl. The door swung open. I stumbled into the hallway, nearly collapsing. My lungs burned, my heart jackhammering in my chest. I turned, slammed the door shut. And then, silence. The apartment was dark. Still. The air was wrong, but nothing came after me. For a long moment, I just stood there, hands shaking, staring at my door. And then I looked up. Ethan was standing in his doorway. His face was pale. His eyes dark and hollow. He didn't say anything. Just nodded. Like he knew. Like this had happened before. I swallowed, my throat dry. What the fuck was that? Ethan exhaled slowly. I told you not to look through the peephole. I didn't even have the strength to argue. Something in his expression shifted. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Did you see it? I shook my head, still breathless. No. But it saw me. Ethan's jaw clenched. He looked at my door, then back at me. You can't stay here, he said quietly. Not anymore. I let out a shaky breath. What happens if I do? Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, finally, he said, same thing that happened to the last guy. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. David. The guy who lived in the locked apartment before. The one who disappeared. The one no one ever saw again. A heavy silence hung between us. Then Ethan sighed, rubbing his face. Go pack your shit. I'll help you move out tonight. I didn't argue. I didn't sleep. I didn't even go back into my bedroom. I just packed my bags, left everything else behind, and walked out of that apartment for the last time. The aftermath. I moved in with a friend the next day. Found a new place a week later. I never went back to that building. Never talked to the landlord. Never asked what was really in that locked room. I blocked the number for the leasing office. I threw out my key. I scrubbed every bit of that place from my life. But sometimes, late at night, I swear, I still hear the whispering. I see you.